Welcome everybody, and thank you for coming to our career talk session with Sean Green, who is tuning in from LA. And just to let you know a little bit about Sean, he was born in Jamaica and raised in Toronto, and his entrepreneurial spirit has been cultivating since he was young. He has a background in computer science and deep-rooted entrepreneurial spirit from watching his mother run the family maid service. So out of school, he partnered with friends to establish a hedge fund in currency markets, then his own startup connecting homeowners with quality contractors. His newest venture, ARTERNAL, in his current position, has taken him to new heights in the art world. And so he'll talk a little bit about that today. And Sean was also very recently named one of the 2020 Artnet Innovators with his work with ARTERNAL. So we're so happy to have you today, Sean, and I will turn it over to you.
Awesome. Well, let me share screen. Thanks so much, Rachel, for the intro. So I'm going to share a screen here. Hopefully you can see my screen.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate your time and allowing me to tell some of my story, and I look forward to answering any questions or anything like that that get asked. And if somebody has a question in real time, they can ask it as well. Interrupt me. Free flowing is cool. So anybody can ask anything at will. But we'll go through my entrepreneurship journey and my story. Rachel, I think you hit on some points, so I'll skip some stuff. But yeah, we'll look at my background, my beginnings as an entrepreneur, how I got into the art world, entrepreneurship, art, raising, venture, and some tips, advice, best practices that I have. So as Rachel alluded to, I was born in the island of Jamaica, not Jamaica, Queens, for anybody who is from or came from New York. And my mom, hustler mom, raised me in Toronto, Canada. I learned everything that I know about entrepreneurship from her. But she, wanted to pay for education, and I went to University of Western Ontario first, and then completed my degree in computer science from York University. And so, my entrepreneurship mindset started as I trailed my mom. She consummate hustler, consummate, professional as well. She served, top doctors, lawyers, judges, physicians. She ran a maid service, and I saw her grit, her hustle, her determination, how she didn't let anything stop her or get in the way. She'd have her down days, she'd have her up days, but she always kept it like, for the most part, Obama cool, and like, really went after it the way how somebody should. And for me, I was able to watch her, able to help work. I was cleaning toilets, I was vacuuming, I was, dusting, doing all that stuff. So, it's like, there's no job too low, from my mom's standpoint when it comes to making sure that her kids had like a better life and a successful, ability or a successful path to a future. And so you're also looking at her retirement plan. But, she was the one who instilled in me, the determination, the hustle, that allowed me to be, the entrepreneur who I am today. And, my first foray into entrepreneurship was, a startup hedge fund in 08 to 10 after school, when the market was crashing. So not ideal timing. Timing is typically everything. But what was key was the learnings that I got, doing a lot of business development for the fund, setting up the strategy. Just people were risk averse and weren't putting capital into funds. So, I got my first stripes and understood, what failure was, and then went on to my next venture, which was net rentals, connecting homeowners and quality contractors. And in this business, I was a first time CEO of like my own tech startup, and had a partner who didn't have the risk profile to actually be in a tech startup. And we were spending money that we didn't have on marketing when product market fit wasn't even there. And so you're making these mistakes that in hindsight, were good for us to learn from, but it were painful as you're making them. But that's how I had my first, role as a CEO. And then when that business ended up fizzling out, I then took my first step into the art world. And empathy actually brought me into the art world. One of my really good friends was moving from her corporate gig into becoming an artist full time. And at this point, I was just like, how are you going to pay your rent? This is crazy. And she was just like, well, I'm sick and tired of, Bay Street at the time, in Toronto, which is similar to what Wall Street is in New York. And I was just like, how are you going to be able to, get people to buy this work? Can I come see your studio? And she was just like, yeah. And I was just like, oh, you're serious? You actually have a studio? So I'm here like, okay, let's book time. So I go to her studio. And it was nothing like the image that you're seeing here, hella tinier than that. And I was looking around and I'm like, wow, this is real. And you're planning to sell work and survive. I was like, I need to meet some more people who are just as crazy as you are. And in my previous startup, the one connecting homeowners and quality contractors, there was a contractor who wanted me to shoot his before and after, because we were one of the first companies who was, filming content back in 2012, that is. And I told him about my friend, and I was like, look, I'm considering getting a job, but I still got this burning desire to be an entrepreneur and figure out what my friend is trying to do and see if I can help her. And so he was like, you know what? My dad was an artist and he had a drug overdose. And, I still think he had a lot to go and a lot that he wanted to fulfill. And he goes, here's 12K, take this and get started. The job world is too small for you. And, typical Black founder, you like, we have no friends and family to give us money to be able to start things. And I was just like, oh shoot, people actually give you money to start a business. What you need to do, let's get it. So I took that 12K and started to, now I had like some money so I could stay alive a little bit while I was able to do research. And for me, I'm very like maniacal with my research. I deep dive. I want to understand. I want to spend as much time in artist studios that I could, because I was like, I got to serve the artists. And I met, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 different artists. And I was going into their different studios and understanding how they worked, what their impetus for creating was, how they were going to source and get people to come to their studios, et cetera. And I got to this point when I kind of understood what I needed to do. And if you can imagine what Yelp is, it was like Yelp for artist studios, so that collectors could be able to come in, come into a city and find where the artist studio is and be able to be independent and not have to like go through a list or Google or, et cetera, to be able to source and find the artwork. So as we were trying to like get this off the ground, we decided to call it My City Muse. We just figured that was a creative name, to use. I don't know if it's good or bad or whatever, but we're like, let's run with it. So as we were trying to get it off the ground several months later, we're like, okay, well, we've built an initial version of it. How do we monetize this after we've got this initial version of it? And that was a problem. And thinking about monetization is something that like, entrepreneurs need to do. Especially Black entrepreneurs, just because under 1% of venture capital goes to Black founders. And now, people are trying to correct this. And so for me, I was like, well, how are we going to monetize this? And we're like, can we charge these artists? And the artist revenue was like a sine curve, just like up and down. So we couldn't really find a sweet spot of what we could be able to charge. So the business ended up fizzling, at that particular point, and we made our first pivot. And if you know anything about tech startups, pivots are hard. And typically it's pivot and die, really, because to be able to, think about another, venture or what else is an opportunity in the space, it's difficult. You need to be able to survive, right? And that's the number one thing as a founder, you just need to be able to survive. So I was like, well, who has the money here? Like, where can we, figure out who can pay us something? And people were like, oh, you need to check these collectors. These collectors have money. And so I was like, all right, cool. Let me find these collectors. Where are they? And they're like, oh, they're at these art openings and exhibitions. And I'm like, okay, cool. When are they? And, between New York and Toronto, it was like Thursday nights, sometimes Friday nights, Saturdays. I was like, okay, let me show up. So, I pull up to these art exhibitions and gallery openings, and I'm looking and like trying to figure out like who are the collectors, whatever, and trying to like suss out the audience who was in there. And I start seeing people go into these rooms and giving details and whether it was their checkbook or whatever. And so I'd be that creepy guy who was like, would you mind going for a coffee like at some point next week or whatever? I get the like, and then I get the sure. And so I would bypass on and I would go with the people who were like, yeah, let's definitely go. And so I'd have, these coffee meetings and just pull apart like what they do, how they buy, how they source art, who they're like, who their top artist is, how they know this, where they get the information from, and start to just compile data and conversations where people let me record it, I record it and just listen to it and play back and hear like where the interesting things they're talking about that can make their life more easier, etc. And we ended up coming to this platform that we wanted to build called Art Local. And if you can imagine what an Instagram like feed is, it was very focused on helping collectors source the artwork without the effort. Because, when a collector's in their own hood, they kind of have an idea of like where stuff is. But if they're in somebody else's, borough or city or whatever, they're like picking up the phone, hey, calling, like they land in Paris, hey, tell me what I should go see. Blah. Like one of my homies flew to LA last night. He's like, yo, which gallery should I hit up? So it's still a thing, but we're like, we've obviously pivoted away from this. But the whole premise was, let's create independence for the collector. Because if we create that independence, it'll feel similar to the world where they're coming from. Because these are like, C-suite level individuals, executives, other entrepreneurs. And then they come into the art world and they're like, what? Where's the information? I got to defer to somebody. People defer to me. Like, what is this place? And so we were trying to make that a more palatable experience by creating independence with this app. And we did this between 2013 to 2015. And if you're familiar with the New Museum, we were part of the New Museum's incubator in New York. And we're still a part. I'm mentoring there now. And at this point, I was just like, how do I amass the most collectors? And from 2013 to 2015, we got about 10,000 plus collectors, art consultants, art advisors, et cetera, using our platform. And it was interesting, for us because we learned a lot. We learned that people love the app and trying to source. And when we shut it down, people were like, where is it? How do I find it? And so we knew we knew we had something, but it was becoming too utopian, like, because when we were trying to monetize it, we went to these galleries and we're like, hey, I see you advertising in Art Forum magazine and gallery guides. And we're like, how are you understanding the data? Because data is everything and it's going to continue to be everything. And bear in mind, we're talking about data like, initially 6 years ago, right? Before like Cambridge Analytica and this whole Facebook scandal and Twitter and the election and all this stuff, right? And we're like, data is going to be the most important thing to your business. And we can help you understand who's coming through your doors. We can geofence, the areas because we have people's geo positions. And that's how we were scraping the walls of art around these people and then throwing it into this Instagram feed, and they can select it and then pick the galleries that they wanted to go to based on what they saw showing. We were very like art forward. And that's what was enticing to people in this like Instagram like feed and favorite and then create, a map for you. But dealers were like, look, Sean, this is all cool, but we really don't care about foot traffic. All we care about is a sale. And I was like, heck you mean you don't care about foot traffic? I'm like, what are these doors here for? And they're just like, well, we fly around the globe to get our collectors. We fly around, we go to we host these, exhibitions in our galleries, and then we fly international to get the right collectors. And they come to our booths and blah blah blah. And I was just like, wow. So I spent 2 years building this platform that collectors, the artists, et cetera, really love. But I'm trying to monetize through you, the dealer, and you don't want to pay for this thing. So when I had like 10, 15, 25, 40, 50, 60 conversations, and we did like maybe 5 deals, I was just like, this is not the cadence of success that I was looking for. So we need to pivot again. And like it's hard to realize when you're going to pivot. You kind of know it's kind of like creeping up on you, but then you're like, what the heck am I going to do if this thing doesn't succeed? And you start going through all these like mental gymnastics and emotional roller coasters, being like, yo, I told my mom I was going to make it. And like, my friends know that like I've been working on this thing, and we're like, 3, 4 years deep. What am I going to say? And so you go through all these like, internal thoughts and processes, and in some cases depressions for some founders. I don't know if maybe I've hit some depression states. You never really know. I mean, with Black people, we deal with a lot, so it could be par for the course. But there was like I still knew that there was something here, and it was just to be able to find what it is that was. So I end up hearing that we don't care about foot traffic. All we care about is the sale. And that all we care about is the sale just continue to resonate with me, because there's a reason why they just care about that. What is that reasoning? And how do we get them closer to the sale? So I said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to build the dominant sales tool for galleries. We're going to take that suffix of a sentence and make that our thesis, embody it, and figure out how we need to get there. And so before where we are, let's see if we have an Arternal side. Yes, here we are. So today we're Arternal, but in order to be able to get there, we had to understand like how these dealers actually operate. And it was hard at first because we made the decision to pivot in 2015 and a half, I think it was. And we're like, how are these guys doing their business? We start having these conversations, and I'm deep diving again, and like, what are these guys doing to be able to understand like how their business functions and what tools they need to be able to get the job done if they're trying to drive this sale. And we start to dig in. It's just me and my 2 co-founders at the time. And as we're digging in, we're trying to create stuff that currently exists in other industries, like Salesforce, HubSpot, Pipedrive, Zoho. We're looking at all these different client relationship management CRM tools, and we start building different parts of it. We're like, yo, we're gonna just steal from here, take from this, do from that, package it all up, sell it to the dealer. So we do this, and as we're trying to figure out what works, what's sticking, what's not, like nothing is sticking in. We're in 2016 now. It's like summer, like the beginning of summer, and I was just like, shoot, man, this is like, we're starving. Barely, like, I think we got a couple small checks, like a 20K check here, 50K check here, just keeping the lights on, to stay alive. And I was like, you know what, let me go back and deep dive behind the scenes again, just like dig in. And this one meeting that I had in Chelsea, New York, where all the galleries are, I'm headed there in an Uber. It's my last day in New York. I was gonna fly back to LA, and I called the gallery like, "Hey, I'm coming in to see Jessica." They're like, "Oh, she left." I was like, "Heck, you mean she left?" I'm like 5 minutes away from the store, and I think she went to go chase some money. Upper East Side, some collector probably was like, "Hey, I'm ready to pay," and blah blah blah. I want to see you, so she went to go chase that. Can't wrong her. She went to go chase the money. But they're like, you can probably meet with the assistant. And I'm just like, meet with the assistant. I'm like, all right, I'll call you back. And so I call my co-founder, see him, like, yo, Steve, this, the director left. I think I want to get back to New York. I think I want to get back to LA. I think I might just go back to JFK. He's like, yeah, you should just go do it. And so I hop out the Uber and I'm walking, and I'm like walking away from the gallery. And I'm like, I don't think this is gonna be worth my time. I'm like, you know what? Let me just go in and let me see what this assistant's doing. So I go in, I'm like, hey, can I see the assistant? And so I sit down, I'm with her, and she's got like 10 cascading compose boxes with similar copy in the text window of the email composed. And I was just like, why do you have like a chain of compose windows open with similar copy? And she was just like, because I'm writing these personal emails. I'm like, don't you have MailChimp or like HubSpot or like something to that quicker? She's like, what do you mean? You can't write a form letter, with just a name change to millionaires and billionaires. I'm like, okay, I get it. But who's optimized this process? She's like, what do you mean? I'm like, do you not see what you're doing? Like, you're copying and pasting. You got like compose windows. And she was just like, well, this is how it's done. So I was like, okay, I'm going to leave here and I'm going to come back. I want to do some research and I want to come back with a product. So we end up leaving the gallery. I call my co-founders. I'm like, guys, I think I know exactly what we need to do here. We got like 6 to 8 weeks, but I need to do some more research. So I do some more research with another 10 to 20 galleries that I had in my Rolodex. And they all have the exact same process of how they prepare for their exhibitions and communicate to their clients or prepare for their art fairs. And this is very labor intensive copy and paste process. And I was like, if I can automate this process, I finally have a key or wedge in that I can build a whole product around. And so as I go back to my co-founders, I'm like, okay, guys, we have like 6 weeks to build this thing. As the art calendar follows, fashion. So it's spring and fall. And we're going into the fall calendar, which is super busy, for the art market, openings, exhibitions. I'm like, if we can put this in people's hands and it works, they'll engage and we win. And my co-founders look at me and they're like, look, we really only have until December here. And it's 2016 December. Spoiler alert, they're still here. But at this particular time, it's a little scary because they're like, yo, like we can't survive anymore. And so we go back in the lab, we start building, we come out with a project that's ugly but functional. We put it in the hands of like our first dealer and we wait. And 5 days later, we go and check in and they're like, we go to their opening and like, Sean, what literally took me 3 days took me 3 hours. And I was like, hit. And then I'm like, now all we got to do is like try and sell this into, several other guys. So now we go on to sales tip, which was me. And I'm here like calling guys, trying to get a meeting, get another like 3 meetings over the course of the next 3 months. We signed 4 deals and we go into Art Basel, Miami. And we triple up coming out of there. I think we had like 12 deals coming out of Art Basel, Miami. And it's like March 2017. I call one of my advisors, who's Brad Feld. If you look him up, he's like one of the godfathers of venture capital. It just so happens he was paired with me when I was in Toronto. I'm like, yo, I'm trying to raise my pre-seed. And he's like, let me connect you with Charles Hudson. Charles Hudson is like one of the Black guys who's one of the realists in the game and doing it and cutting checks to founders of diverse backgrounds. And because of Brad Feld's intro, lends some credence. And Charles was like, sure, let me sit down. And as he's going through, he's like, I know nothing about the art world. I'm like, don't worry, we don't need that. I need you to be able to cut a check and help with vision. And so he's like, let me dig in some more. So we dug in. And then I'm talking to him in Miami, talking to him in LA, talking to him. And I went to New York. And finally, after several conversations, he's like, look, I'm in. And he's like, I'm in because I know if the ship is going to go down, you're going to go down with the ship. I'm like, you're pretty much right. So he's like, I'm going to cut you a check. And so we raised a $500,000 pre-seed round. And that pre-seed allowed us to really start to build product that we saw around the vision of what ARTERNAL is. And fast forward to today, as Rachel said, you see the image here. I'm one of Artnet's entrepreneurs or innovators of the year in their entrepreneurship section. And, for us, it was really about getting the job done, getting the work done, putting the work in. And, like, do we need press? You want to try and get press? We're like, you know what? If we have the best tool in the game, press will come. And so we're sitting in 2020 in the middle of COVID, and I've gotten like 3 or 4 articles and podcasts and webinars and all that stuff that I've done in the last, like, 4 to 6 months. And now people are asking, like, who is the Sean Green guy? Some of my homies in Paris are just like, they're asking me if I know who the Sean Green guy and where'd he pop up out of. I'm like, yo, we've been working. Like, that's not, we've been working. And that focus on the work, on building great product, on research, on engaging with, the right target market, that's everything that we need in order to be able to win. And so that focus and that determination and what we need to do allowed us to be able to get here. Now we're a fully verticalized tool that's about, your art business. So we have the CRM, the client relationship management tool, that was our bread and butter. We have data, business analytics and metrics. We allow people to follow their client journey. We have full inventory management that's competing with the likes of your art, systems, gallery managers, like, art-based. And so for us, it was like building the tool that allow you to be able to run the art business. So get the business out of the way so you can just be focused on the art. And some of our clients today are some of the top galleries, auction houses, and art fairs that exist in the game. And so, if you know galleries like Hauser and Wirth, which is the #1 gallery from our perspective in the globe, um, auction house like Phillips Auction House, who's a client of ours. I got my second meeting with the CEO of Sotheby's, overall on Friday, because he's impressed with what we do. And so, I'm just a dude who was born in the island of Jamaica and has ascended to the top of the art world through just like grit, determination, hustle. So it's possible. And the art world is very white, as we all know. But I'm a trusted Black guy in the space, right? And so there's a lot that we have the ability to do. America exports 2 things: culture and technology. And the culture that it exports is Black culture. So we got to own ours and go after it, right? And technology, we're about to open windows and doors. Like, I'm starting a venture capital fund right now to invest in Black women and invest in Black men, right? Because they say that we ain't out here. No, we here. And I'm going to be beating down doors to get people to commit funds to us. We're trying to raise about 35 million to 45 million in this fund. And like, asking where the money's going to come from, I don't know, but it's going to happen because we're going to make it happen, right? So I want to make sure that people that look like me have opportunity, and have access and get access to resources. And that's what's like really key. So art for me, I've had to learn, art. And when I think about where my eye was, before, like, I didn't really, like, I thought what good art looked like. And then today I'm like, what was I thinking? Like, that's trash. And now, like, I feel like I'm developing and having more of a seasoned eye when it comes to like choosing, and I'm collecting and looking at art. This is one Black artist, like Monica Ikegwu, who she's fire. Love what she does. And I'm like, Monica, I need to get a piece. We're gonna figure it out. But you just see works. Derek Adams, one of my homies, Rasheed Johnson, is one of my investors. My pool of people around me over the course of years, has grown. And in the height of where we've been with COVID, I really realized when I stepped into like my first gallery that I was able to, I was just like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm getting back pieces of my soul, because COVID and quarantine and keeping yourself wrapped up and, got a Peloton bike in the corner, but that doesn't do too much for like where my psyche needs to be at. And when you're around art, like, I just realized how it just feels like I'm getting back pieces of me. And I love art for the history and culture and understanding. Like, I couldn't stand history in school, but when I learned history through art, it's like the greatest thing for me. I eat it up all day. The things that I've learned with entrepreneurship, like, if anybody asks, like, what do you learn? Patience is this real big thing that, like, I realize that I don't need to sprint. I need to run. It's like it's a marathon is what entrepreneurship is. And just finding success is a marathon, learning from your mistakes, being comfortable in failing as long as you're trying to find a path to grow, right? And I believe if you're not growing, you're dying. There's no in between. And anybody who says, "Yo, we coasting," I'm like, "No, you're not. You dying." Like that's facts for me. So, it's all about growth and having the right people around you is what's super key. Like if you don't have the right people around you, you'll never see or achieve the success that you want. you know I continue to remember my mom just like, "Yo, what you doing over there? Why you coming home here? Why you hanging out with this person?" Like, "Mom, stop bugging." Like, what? Like, why are you on me for like the people who are in my crew? But it's legit like the people who are in your inner circle and your crew and people who you continue to network. Like one of the things that I think is important is your network. Continue to build network. If you're an introvert, figure out how you can become an outrovert just to be able to figure out how you can network and add people to your circle. Because that your net worth is the sum of the people who, when you pick up the phone, they pick up their phone too, right? Like that's facts. You can't get a phone call out there to anybody. Like, my son and my daughters, they're like, they got every contact they can, like crazy. Like when I think about it, because they got my whole Rolodex to pull at. It doesn't matter what they want to do. But I also mentor and advise, and I'm like, "Yo, as long as you're working, I'll work for you. What you need, we need to be introduced to, our contacts you need, things like that, right? When it comes to like investors and things like that, you know, as an entrepreneur, you got to be able to survive and figure it out. But like less than 1% of venture capital goes to us, which is why we're starting the fund. And it's important to understand that, when you sit down, with potential investors, if you ever do that, like, we got to code switch and we got to do things, and it's understanding, how we need to have the conversations. But it's always about researching the person on the other side of the aisle. Even if they don't research you, make sure you know make sure you know more about them than they're prepared for, and catch them off guard. Uh, because that's how we win. We just got to find our angles to be able to get in, and we'll win. Today we have some of the top investors in the game. If you know who Andreessen Horowitz is, Ben Horowitz is one of the luminaries of venture capital. He has a check in my current seed round. I'm just in the process right now. We're closing 2 million. Right now we're pretty much done closing 2 million. And that for me is a feat. It's the most money I've ever had in the corporate account, you know. And so it's gonna give us the ability to do what we really want to do. And we want to own this whole art world. And we don't say it lightly, but like any transaction needs to be on our rails. Any communication needs to be on our cables, and that's what we're really focused on. And I'm focused on representation. Like if I have this access and I'm connected to these people, how do I help advance representation of people that look like us, in the game? And if, being able to have the people we have on our cap table, Charles Hudson is a Black investor, super dope. Support that we have, from our white investors as well, is going to allow us to be able to get to where we need to get to, with as a company, Arternal, but also help me as I have other aspirations. So advice, best practices, things like that. I mean, hopefully there was some points as I've been talking, but just some ones here, YOLO, because you only live once. So, my thing is like, go out there and take risks, hop at opportunities, go grab them, go get them. Don't worry about failing. Like failure is a path, right? It's a stepping stone. Embrace failure. Don't let nobody tell you different, because I believe that just when you go out there and take those risks, make them calculated. Go with the gut. Because my thing is like, if I go with my gut, even if I'm wrong, I'm like, yo, I went with like the energy that I was following. And I'm always about a vibe. So if I'm following that vibe and it led me there and I did that, we did that. It's like when you're dating somebody and like people are like, yo, they're wrong. But I'm like, yo, I feel my gut. They were nice. Da, 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 da. It's like, even if that failed, don't matter, right? Like where I was in that moment at that time, the variables that were in my control that I was leveraging, that's why we went there. It went left, but we went right to begin with, you know? So just embrace that and take them risks, make them calculated and just take them. One of my daughters is named Maya Ava Green, because we like Ava DuVernay as well. So, and Ava Green is kind of like evergreen, so we called her Maya Ava Green. And she was named after Maya Angelou, and Maya Angelou has, you know, one of the dopest quotes that I love, which I'm gonna have to read it because I don't want to mess it up. It's like, you know, I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And that always sticks with me because it's facts. Like I'm out here building relationships, connecting with different people, and I'm always trying to leave people, you know, with a good vibe, with a good energy, because I know they'll never forget that. They'll forget my name, but they'll be able to ask somebody, "Yo, who's that guy again?" Oh, his name was Sean. Okay, great. I need to hit him up. Give me that. Give me his details. So, you know, that's always stuck with me. And in parallel with that was like my mom was always about leading with integrity, right? And when you lead with integrity, you know, people respect you and what you do, and be discerning as you're leading with integrity, right? Like people trust you when you're discerning, and trust is a currency. And as we are in COVID and people kind of figure out how to get out of it, we're going to be in like a trust economy, right? Where I'm only going to hang out with you if I know your joint's safe until we get this vaccine and things like that. So, you know, make people feel a certain way, have a certain vibe, have a certain energy, you know, lead with integrity and be discerning, right? That's key. And you know, lastly, an early advisor of mine was like, yo, careful with your time. And I'm like, what's that mean? Right. And you know, and he was just like, you know, you only have it, it keeps ticking. If you stop, it keeps going. You know, it's an incredibly valuable resource. And it took me years to kind of understand it. But you know, today as I think about it, like time is like everything. You exchange time for money. Like, and capital is important, but time and where you spend it, who you engage with, who you interact with, and what you're trying to do when you spend time for a meeting, when you're preparing for an exam, when you're like trying to get another network, or you know, trying to make ends meet to be able to fulfill your next goal. Like understand like what you're doing with your time, because where you put it and the energy that you get out of it and give into it, will allow you to hit your next goals, whatever milestones, whatever you're trying to do. But you know, it's an incredibly valuable resource and use it effectively. And I think that is my last slide. So hopefully there was some nuggets in there, and I appreciate your time. Thanks for listening to me. Hopefully it wasn't too boring and nobody's falling asleep, but you know, we'll do this in person when there's no COVID.
Thank you much. Thank you so much, Sean.
Of course.
That was great.
Well.
That was really great. No, I'm sure that everyone is totally energized. So I know we only have about 15 minutes left, and especially being mindful of the preciousness of everyone's time. Yeah. I just wanted to ask maybe if we could open up with some questions. I know that Ahmed Hussein, who's on the call, definitely has a question for you. He did a really interesting internship this summer, working at a gallery in New York, and also doing some analysis of the way that they work with their social media, which kind of made me think about some of the work that you did initially in thinking about Art Local, but also how you've translated and pivoted quite nicely to Arternal. Mm. I'm also curious, like, so Art Local, like, is it like, you know, what's up with that?
Yeah. So I literally, like, we parked it, like it's gone. It might still be on the App Store, maybe just for nostalgic purposes, but like memories. But yeah, it doesn't exist anymore. We do have a vision to bring it back later, but when we're just absorbing revenue from over here and like, you know, putting it over here because we don't worry about it. It's for the culture. It's for, like, you know, we'll do that later. And like we have a vision to come back to the artist at some point, you know, because that's where we began as well. And it's about being able to help artists participate in their upside. And so, you know, we're about to deploy payments like bank wire payments, which has never been done in the game before. And so, because the only people who process art payments are like Wells Fargo, Chase, you know, Bank of America, because it's wires, right? The art world rarely takes credit cards, and you know, the other form of payment is check. So we're meeting them where they are. You know, and it costs about $250,000 to like integrate with the payments back end. So, you know, not
You like cash.
Yeah, yeah, they do, right? So we got to figure out how to do these wires, and we've got a banking partner who's going to help us, you know, be able to do that. It's not a cheap banking partner, but you know, we're closing this seed round to be able to get us there. So, and then we can be able to pinch off money because we'll be able to know what artists have sold, and then we get artists to create profiles that we can just send money into if their work was sold in our back end infrastructure.
Great, thank you.
Sean, I have a, sorry, Jasmine, I thought you were raising your hand, not waving the fly. But I have a quick question for you that could be relevant for the students. And so I'm wondering, you know, we have students that could, you know, potentially be thinking about different ideas and sort of, you know, wanting to kind of enter the art world in a different way or with their perspective.
Right.
So my question is, what kind of suggestions would you give students to kind of test out their ideas before they have the capital? So kind of knowing if, you know, if this really can go anywhere.
Yeah.
Also at the same time, how to protect their ideas so that other people aren't like, you know what, that is a good idea. And perhaps they can get to the capital faster. So what would you suggest in those two scenarios?
Yeah. So scenario number one, number one thing I suggest is what we call like get out the room and have conversations. If you've got, like, you probably heard me just talk about who I'm going to serve, like the user, like consistently, right? And because I need to have conversations with these people. Like I spent a lot of time in artist studios, you know, just understanding what an artist is. So a lot of time in collectors' cribs and understanding, like, you know, why they're buying stuff. So whoever you're trying to serve, get out and meet them, even if you're the creepy guy or girl like me, you know, but you're just trying to get to an answer. So it really doesn't matter what people, you know, are thinking. You're just trying to get to an answer. Like, is there a pain point there? Make sure you're solving a problem. White founders have the ability to not focus on solving a problem because they can get a bunch of money. Black founders need to focus on solving problems. Like, make sure we're solving a problem so that we can find the ways to get money to support solving that problem. And if it's not a burning pain point, move on to something else. It's got to be burning, because you got to be on the journey to help somebody who's burning and can't sleep because of this pain point, right? It's different for consumer goods. Actually, no, consumers is the same thing. Same thing. You want to solve a pain point, something that people's needs. Now to your other part, like if a founder comes to me, yo, love that Hank in the back end, Cheryl. Shoot, I just saw it. Fire. Hank's my homie, so that's fire. Sorry to digress there, but any founder that comes to me is like, you know, I'm like, my idea is secretive, I can't really tell. I'm like, yo, then we can't chat, because like it ain't about ideas are a million of us, right? Not a million, right? Because you're just thinking about this thing. You know what means the most? Execution. If you can't execute, doesn't matter, right? So have the right conversations. You don't want to go to like Google and be like, hey Google, hey Facebook. Shoot, my phone, I have an Android and an iPhone, and when I said that, my Android like popped up. So when you're trying to suss it out, like speak to people who you think can add value and like what you're trying to execute on next. Like, what's the goal that you're trying to get to? And just speak to people and let them know, because when you open that up, you'd be surprised how people want to actually help you, not steal your idea, but help you and introduce you to the next person, and you get that next network. And anytime you're meeting with people, you want to make sure you're getting two things. I think, like, you meet with people who can give you capital. So you want to get like money, but you also, human capital can be sometimes just equally as important. So it's capital, but it's capital money, and then capital, human capital, which is that network, right? Which is your net worth. Always think about those things. Hopefully that answers your question, Rachel.
Yeah, thank you.
Hello.
Hey.
Yeah, it is Dr. Finley has said, but my question kind of pertains to like the future of how you see kind of technology in the art market, because to me, and kind of alluding kind of to my role I kind of did with social media, I really see technology in this like world as democratization.
Yeah.
So I guess, what is your, or like what future do you see that this like role of technology in a democratization, that like how far do you think is it going? Like, do you like kind of, you touched on, are you trying to take it back to the artist, or are you just really trying to get it to like spread it as much as you can? Like, what is your future kind of, or what do you see the future of this democratization in the art world?
Yeah. So is like, as you're building, you want to stay really acute. So have a micro focus, but have a macro vision, right? Like, and so my macro is I'm building the first B2B art marketplace that's ever existed, right? And so big vision, we're going to get people to interact, do B2B transactions in the back end, right? The micro focus is like, we need to build incredible tools that allow people to get there. Now, what's also part of that focus is, who am I trying to serve, right? Art dealers do not care about democratizing the art world. As I mentioned, they just care about the sale. So de facto, ARTERNAL cannot care about democratizing the art world, right? Like, that's very direct, like acute focus. We can't care about that. What we can care about is the ways in which people interact, and the ways in which, art is sent out to the world, the way in which how people are engaging, et cetera. Like, that's how we focus, and we focus on where commerce and transaction and art exchange is going to happen. But there's other people who are focused on democratization, like Artsy and things like that, right? But for us, very tight. Does that answer? Does that help answer your question, Ahmed? I'm not sure.
Oh, it does. It does. It's just, I know like that's not your focus, but I can see how your platform lends itself to that. That's what I was really like,
Yeah,
I guess,
yeah.
but I was like kind of asking what you personally see the future of your evolving into.
Yeah. So we're evolving into payments. So you can, if you want to do a deal with a collector or with a dealer gallery, and you're in, New York or Atlanta or LA or, London, and somebody's in Hong Kong, we make it happen, right? We facilitate that.
Hi, I'm Janaya.
Hey,
I'm a
Jen.
junior at Spelman. It's nice to meet you. I really enjoyed your talk today. I have
Awesome.
a question. I was wondering, I guess if a bigger company or someone was interested in buying out your product,
Right.
have you ever thought about that? Or like, what are your thoughts and opinions? Because I know like with Sotheby's, they bought out like an art advising company, and
Yeah.
that became a leg of Sotheby's. And that also happened with other companies like Spotify. Like there's other people who come up with things, and Instagram will just go and buy it. So as someone who's an entrepreneur, how do you feel about that? And if you're interested in that at all?
Yeah. So I stay uninterested in that, because you're talking about exit strategy, right? And so I stay uninterested in that, because companies are not sold, they're bought. So if I'm attractive, you'll like, I'm not trying to sell you what ARTERNAL is. So that's one thing to think about. And so I just stay heads down and keep working. But name me like who's hit like that or rang that bell on the New York Stock Exchange that looked like me, right? Like, I don't even know who that is. So tell me, Cheryl, tell me.
Melvin Van Peebles,
Cool. But recently,
the director, Sweet Sweetback's Badass Song, back
nice.
in the day.
Back in the day, exactly. So I don't know anybody in recent memory who's done that. Like in the last decade, 2 decades, that I can just like pull off the top of my head. And so I'm trying to like see if we can get there. You know, there might be a number, like everybody has a number, so there might be a number. But you know, Sotheby's is meeting with me right now, right? They're like, I'm interested in the future of the art market that you see. You know, I got my second meeting with the CEO of Sotheby's on Friday, right? So 2 days from now that I'm going to be in hella prep for over the course of the next like 2 nights. But it's like, you know, I know we've got something and we're just going to continue to like hustle and go after it, because the opportunities there. And then I want people who are coming after me and like y'all to be able to see that it's possible and like we can do it. And you know, we'll see if we get there. Does that answer your question, Janai? Did I like?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, cool. Thanks for the question.
Hi, Sean.
Hey, Jasmine.
And hello. I
Cool.
work
Hey,
with the Art Collective as their graduate research assistant.
awesome.
I have thoroughly enjoyed your talk as it's very much refreshing to hear your perspective as an entrepreneur. I too grew up in a household where my father has been an entrepreneur my whole life, and so I definitely value that perspective, especially in the arts. And sometimes
Yeah.
I feel like, you know, young people, especially, like I have colleagues who I know are stepping out on their own.
Mhm.
And I think that that's so important, just in this current climate where all of us are pretty much content creators.
Right.
And with that in mind, I know that you mentioned your plans to fund young Black women and Black male entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
I was just curious if you could share a little bit more about those plans with our students and how you
Yeah.
do that. Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, definitely, definitely. So, you know, I know what my path has been over the course of the last decade plus, right? And it's been trying. And so, you know, when you look at the numbers, they're abysmal, right? Like the wealth gap is crazy. You know, there's 11 Black families to make the wealth of one white family. That's insane. You know, average net worth of Black families, something like it's like 7 or 17,000 or something ridiculous, and the white families like 150,000 or whatever it is, right? So like this is just, I mean, we live on 2 completely different worlds, right? And so when we think about it, you know, we're like, well, how do we make the most impact so that those founders can go back and affect their communities? And right in that seed space, so like the round that I'm raising right now is a seed round, right? And that's typically where we're going to play in, because what we're trying to do is we're trying to close the gap from the seed to the A, which is like dearth. It's like there's rarely any Black founders that cross that chasm from seed to Series A. And so, you know, my focus is getting my Series A done in the next 12 to 24 months after closing this round we're closing right now, right? And so we can start having numbers, you know, putting points on the board in the Series A, B, C, et cetera. But if we can't get there, so we're going to invest at the seed moment for an individual or for a company and give them all the resources they need to cross the chasm and raise their Series A and help them raise that Series A. So we can start propelling people that look like us over there to like later stage funding where you can raise, you know, 5 million, 10 million, $20 million, right? And build that unicorn and be that unicorn status, as they call it, right? $1 billion business. There's a collective called Transparent Collective that I'm an advisor in and mentor in, has a wider purview. So you know, it's focused more on a diverse landscape, you know, Latinx, Black women and men, and women, like women, white men, Hispanic, et cetera, is what Transparent Collective does. And so if there's a founder that meets with, our fund and doesn't fit the bill like purely, then we're like, well, hey, we're not just going to tell you no and leave you out there. We're going to be like, no, but guess what? We have Transparent Collective. We fly people out to the Bay. You can be able to get tooled up, get the knowledge, get the understanding, everything you need, how you pitch, where your business needs to go, what you need to do next so that this can become a venture backable opportunity, because that's what you need to think about. And if that's the case, then we'll get you there. And so the pre-seed, whereas like very early, you may not have full product, you may not have clients or customers. We're not going to play in that lane. We'll selectively be there. I mean, but that founder needs to be exceptional. But what needs our help really is that seed tape. Even though angel checks are hard to come by, but we want somebody who's going to hustle and go after it. And if you're going to hustle and go after it, because this takes a lot mentally, etc., then we're going to put you in position to go the distance, right? So you can get your pre-seed done somewhere else, right? Like Charles Hudson does pre-seed. He did my pre-seed, right? But I was able to show him something to get him to cut that initial check of, $250,000 or, 150,000, etc.
Thank you so much. That's really great information and very much appreciated. Yeah, it definitely resonates and makes me think of like, I'm based in Atlanta and from Atlanta, and
Awesome.
Makes me think of
Jewel down there, Jewel Burke.
I do not.
She runs Google for startups down there.
Oh wow.
Yeah, she was a founder who exited to Amazon. Part Pick was her company.
Oh
look
wow.
her up. Yeah, look her up.
I definitely will.
Yeah, she's one of my homies too. So like, but check it out.
I definitely will. I definitely think of the Center for Civic Innovation as well. I don't know if you're familiar with that organization, ran by Rohit Malhotra. He's the founder, and he specializes in solving civic issues, specifically with Atlanta-based entrepreneurs.
Awesome.
In all different realms, like food, justice, and art as well, but just civic entrepreneurs. And so your model for investing in different young art-based entrepreneurs is like definitely ringing a bell there. So for sure. Thank you so much.
Thank you as well. Thank you as well.
Thank you. At this 3 o'clock hour. Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you. So thank you so much, Sean. This was really interesting, and we have, if you've noticed, been recording the session so that we're able to offer it to other students as well.
Cool.
Students, we also have